The spaceport was alive with noise, ships landing and leaving, voices mixing with strange alien sounds. Among this chaos sat a human man named Daniel. He was tired after a long day of work and had finally bought himself a warm meal. The smell of the food gave him comfort. It was the only good moment of his day. Daniel sat at a small metal table in the corner of the food court. He placed the tray carefully, steam rising from the dish. He had been saving credits for 2 days to afford this meal. His stomach growled with hunger. He picked up his fork slowly, ready to enjoy the first bite, but before the fork reached his mouth, he felt something strange. The plate shifted just a little. He looked down in surprise. A small hand had grabbed a piece of bread from his tray. Daniel froze. The hand belonged to a girl, not human. Her skin was pale blue with faint silver lines running across her cheeks, her eyes wide and glowing softly. She looked no older than 16. Her thin frame shook as she clutched the bread-like treasure. Daniel's first reaction was anger. "Hey!" he said, his voice sharp. He grabbed her wrist quickly, the bread almost dropped. The girl gasped in fear, her eyes full of panic. People around turned to look. Some aliens chuckled, others whispered. A few even shouted, "Thief! She's a thief!" Their voices echoed in the food court. Daniel held her wrist tightly. The girl trembled, her lips pressed together. She looked like she wanted to speak, but no words came. He noticed her clothes were torn. Her arms were covered with dust and scratches. She looked weak, too weak even to stand properly. The human guard from the food stall stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Do you want me to take her?" he asked Daniel, his hand already on the baton at his belt. Daniel looked at the girl again. Her chest moved fast. Her eyes were shining with tears, her thin fingers still clutching the stolen bread. He expected her to fight back or beg, but instead she whispered, barely audible, "I was hungry." The word struck Daniel like a blow. He hesitated, his anger began to fade, but the crowd was growing. The guard was waiting. The girl was still shaking in his grip. For a moment, Daniel thought about himself. He remembered the years when he was younger, when he had been hungry and alone on Earth, when no one helped him. He remembered nights when he had to fight for food in the dark alleys of his city. He loosened his grip just slightly. "Why steal from me?" he asked, his voice softer this time. The girl blinked and shook her head. "Because you looked kind," she whispered. Her voice cracked, weak and broken. The guard frowned. "She must be punished. Rules are rules," he said firmly. "Thieves cannot be spared." Daniel felt the eyes of the crowd pressing on him. Some wanted punishment, some looked bored, but the girl's trembling body made it hard for him to stay angry. Her skin was cold against his hand. Her eyes were pleading without words. "Wait," Daniel said quickly to the guard. "She's just a child, look at her, she's starving." The guard scowled. "Doesn't matter. The law is clear." He took a step forward, his baton ready. The girl suddenly pulled her wrist, breaking free from Daniel's hold. She turned and ran, clutching the bread tightly to her chest. The crowd shouted as she pushed through them, her small figure almost lost in the chaos. Daniel's heart jumped. Without thinking, he stood and followed her. His half-eaten meal left behind, he ran through the crowd, his boots striking the metal floor. The guard shouted behind him, but Daniel didn't stop. The girl dashed into a narrow alley between two docking bays. Daniel followed, the noise of the crowd fading. Only the sound of his own breath and her light steps ahead remained. She stumbled, her legs too weak, the bread almost slipping from her hands. Daniel caught up to her, grabbing her shoulder gently this time. She tried to struggle, but she had no strength. "Stop, I won't hurt you," Daniel said, his voice calm. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes full of fear, her chest rising and falling fast. "Why are you following me?" she asked, her voice shaking. Daniel looked at the bread in her hands, then at her thin frame. "Because I need to know your story," he replied. The girl pressed her lips together, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I haven't eaten in 3 days, she whispered. "I tried everywhere, but no one would help me. I didn't want to steal, but I was so hungry." Daniel felt his chest tighten. This wasn't the face of a thief, this was the face of someone broken, someone abandoned. But still, a question burned in his mind. Who was she really? And why was she here? starving in a busy spaceport full of life. The sound of heavy boots echoed from behind. The guard had followed them, his voice booming. "Enough running, thief! Step away, human, or you will be punished too." Daniel looked from the guard to the girl. The girl held the bread tighter, like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Her eyes silently begged Daniel not to let go. Daniel stood there, caught between law and mercy, his mind racing. In that moment he realized this was more than just a stolen meal. This was the beginning of something much bigger, something he could not yet understand. And as the guard raised his baton, Daniel took a deep breath, ready to decide what kind of man he truly was. The guard's baton gleamed under the harsh lights of the spaceport alley, his steps heavy, his eyes cold. The alien girl shrank back against the wall, her thin body trembling. Daniel stood between her and the guard, his own heart pounding in his chest. "Move aside, human," the guard ordered, his voice sharp. "This thief belongs to the law." Daniel's fists tightened. He remembered the fear in her eyes, the way she whispered about hunger. She was no criminal. She was desperate. "She's just a child," Daniel said firmly. "She doesn't need punishment. She needs food," the guard sneered. "Mercy makes thieves bolder." He raised the baton higher, ready to strike before the weapon could fall. The girl cried out, "Stop, please!" Her voice cracked, tears streaking down her dusty cheeks. "I didn't want to steal. I had no choice." Daniel turned, looking at her, his chest tight. "Tell me why," he urged softly. "Tell me the truth." The girl hugged the bread to her chest like it was life itself, her voice weak but clear. "I lost my family," she whispered. "We came here on a ship. We were promised safety, but raiders attacked my mother, my brother. They never made it," the guard scoffed. "Lies, all beggars tell the same story." But Daniel saw the pain in her glowing eyes. It was real, too real to fake. "What about your father?" he asked gently. Her lips trembled. "Taken," she whispered, "sold into the mines." Her voice cracked with pain. The crowd at the mouth of the alley murmured. Some looked uneasy. Others turned away. No one wanted to hear her story. No one wanted to care. Daniel's own memories stirred. Years ago he had seen children cry on Earth's streets, crying for food, ignored by the world. That memory cut deep now. The guard stepped closer, his baton swinging low. "Enough of this, step aside, human, or I'll treat you as accomplice." Daniel's blood boiled, he clenched his jaw. "If you want her," he said slowly, "you'll have to go through me." The guard's eyes narrowed. "Foolish human," he growled. But before he could strike again, the girl fell to her knees. Her small voice echoed, "Please don't fight, I'll go. Just don't hurt him." Daniel bent quickly, lifting her gently by the arms. "You don't have to surrender," he whispered. "You're not alone now." The guard hesitated. The crowd was watching closely. Punishing a weak child was one thing. Fighting a stubborn human was another. He gritted his teeth. "Fine, keep your little thief," he spat. "But don't cry later when she betrays you." With that, he stormed away. The crowd slowly dispersed, their whispers fading. Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He looked down at the girl still trembling in his arms. "You're safe for now," he murmured. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes shining with confusion. "Why did you protect me?" she asked softly. "You don't even know me." Daniel's gaze hardened. "Because I know what hunger feels like," he said, "and I know what it's like to have no one stand for you." Her lips quivered, her eyes lowered. "I didn't mean to steal," she whispered again. "I was just so hungry I thought I could take a little and run. But when you caught me, I thought it was over." Daniel handed the bread back to her. She stared at it like it was the most precious thing in the galaxy. Slowly, she tore it in half, offering a piece back to him. Daniel blinked in surprise. "Why, give me some? You need it more than I do." Her thin smile was sad. "Because you didn't let them take me," she said. "You deserve half." Daniel took the bread slowly, his chest heavy with unspoken feelings. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl hesitated. "Lyra," she said softly. My name is Lyra. Daniel nodded. I'm Daniel, he replied. And from now on, Lyra, you're not alone. Her eyes widened, hope flickering for the first time. But then, her body stiffened. She looked over her shoulder into the dark alley. They'll come back, she whispered in fear. The enforcers, or worse, the ones who want me. Daniel frowned. Who wants you? He asked. Lyra's lips pressed shut, her body shaking. If I tell you, you'll run away too, she whispered. Daniel knelt, meeting her eyes. I won't run, he said firmly. Tell me, Lyra, I need to know the truth. She hugged herself tightly, her voice barely a breath. I'm not just a poor thief. I'm being hunted. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Hunted? The word echoed in his mind like a warning bell. By who? He pressed. Lyra shook her head. Not here. Not now. It's too dangerous, she whispered, her eyes darting nervously around the alley. Daniel realized the truth was deeper than hunger, deeper than loss. This girl carried a secret that others wanted to bury, a secret that could destroy her, maybe even destroy him if he chose to stand beside her. But as he looked at her trembling form, Daniel knew one thing for certain. He couldn't turn away now. The broken truth had only just begun to reveal itself, and whatever storm was coming, he was already part of it. The night outside the food court grew colder. Neon lights flickered across the steel walls of the spaceport. Daniel and Lyra stayed in the shadows of a narrow alley. The noise of ships and voices faded behind them, but the silence here felt heavier. Lyra sat against the wall, her knees pulled close. She held the half-eaten bread carefully, as if it might vanish. Daniel stood near the entrance of the alley. His eyes scanning every corner, he could feel something watching, something that made his skin crawl. You need rest, Daniel said softly. You look like you haven't slept in days. Lyra nodded weakly. Sleep is dangerous, she whispered. When I close my eyes, they find me. Daniel frowned. Who are they? He asked again, but Lyra only shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. For a moment silence returned. Then a sudden sound echoed, the scrape of boots against metal. Daniel tensed. He saw shadows moving at the far end of the alley, tall figures, more than one, their shapes too controlled to be random wanderers. Lyra stiffened instantly. She grabbed Daniel's sleeve with trembling hands. It's them, she whispered. The hunters. Daniel's heart raced. He looked at her terrified face, then back at the figures. Stay behind me, he said firmly. 3 aliens stepped into view, their skin dark and patterned with sharp lines glowing faint red, their eyes narrow, their movements precise. They carried shock rods strapped to their sides, their gaze fixed on Lyra. There you are, one of them hissed, his voice cold. The runaway. Lyra pressed against the wall, her breath shallow. Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight. Leave her alone, he said, his voice steady though his hands shook. The leader sneered. She belongs to us, he said. Step aside, human, this is no concern of yours. Daniel's fists clenched. She's not property, he replied, his voice rising. She's a child, and she won't go with you. The hunters chuckled darkly. One of them pulled out his rod, electricity buzzing at the tip. Do you think you can stop us? He asked, mocking. Daniel's throat went dry. He had no weapon, no plan. But he couldn't back down. Not with Lyra behind him shaking like a leaf. Why are you after her? Daniel demanded. She's just a girl, what could she have done? To you? The leader's eyes narrowed, his voice low. She is no ordinary girl, she carries a bloodline that must be erased before she grows strong enough to challenge us. Lyra's face twisted with fear. Stop, she whispered. Don't say more. Daniel's mind spun. Bloodline. Erased. What did it mean? What kind of danger was she hiding? The hunters advanced slowly, their footsteps echoing like drums. Daniel stepped back, blocking Lyra with his body. You'll have to go through me first, he said, his voice steady even though his heart thundered. The leader smirked. Then so be it. Before the rod could strike, Lyra cried out, her small hands glowing faintly blue. Light spilled across the alley. The hunters froze in surprise. Daniel turned in shock. Lyra's eyes burned brighter than before. A sudden pulse of energy burst from her palms, slamming into the hunters. Sparks flew as two of them staggered back, crashing into the... While the third barely kept his balance, his eyes wide, Daniel stared, his breath caught. This fragile girl had just unleashed power that could break stone. Lyra gasped, clutching her chest, the glow fading fast. "I can't hold it," she whispered, falling to her knees. The hunters recovered quickly, their fury burning. "That power," one hissed. "We cannot let it live." Daniel bent down, lifting Lyra with one arm. "Come on, we have to move," he whispered urgently. They ran deeper into the alley, the hunters chasing close behind, the sound of boots and sparks filling the air. Daniel's lungs burned. Lyra leaned weakly against him, her breath ragged. They turned corner after corner, the spaceport alleys twisting like a maze, but the hunters never stopped, their voices echoing. "You cannot hide, girl. Your fate is sealed." Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't fight them, but maybe he could outsmart them. He spotted a maintenance hatch half buried in the wall. He pushed it open quickly, shoving Lyra inside, then followed, pulling it shut just as the hunters' shadows reached the corner. Inside was dark, the smell of rust and oil strong. Narrow tunnels stretched out beneath the docking bay. Daniel leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Lyra sat weakly on the floor, her glowing eyes dim now. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel asked, his voice rough. "You have power. They're hunting you because of it." Lyra looked down, tears on her cheeks. "Because everyone runs when they find out," she whispered. "Everyone is afraid of me." Daniel shook his head. "I'm still here," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not running, not from you." Her eyes lifted, shining faintly with hope. "Why?" she asked, almost like a child. Daniel looked at her trembling hands, at the fear written all over her face. "Because someone has to stand with you," he replied, "and I won't let them break you." Outside, the hunters searched the alleys, their angry voices echoing. The danger wasn't gone. It was only waiting. Lyra leaned against Daniel's shoulder, whispering, "They'll never stop. Not until I'm gone." Daniel clenched his jaw, his decision already made. "Then we'll make them stop," he said firmly. And in the dark of the maintenance tunnels, a fragile bond grew stronger, a bond that would soon be tested by the shadows of the galaxy. The maintenance tunnel was cold and dark. Drops of water fell from broken pipes. The air smelled of rust and old oil. Daniel guided Lyra through the narrow path, his hand steady on her shoulder. Every sound behind them made him tense. Lyra stumbled, her legs weak. Daniel caught her before she fell. "Careful," he whispered. "You've pushed yourself too far." She shook her head, her glowing eyes dim. "I had to," she murmured. "If I didn't fight back, they would have taken me." Daniel nodded, his mind racing. The burst of power she released still burned in his memory. It was raw, untamed, dangerous, yet it saved both of them. They found an abandoned storage chamber deeper inside. Rusted crates lined the walls. Daniel cleared a space for her to sit. Lyra lowered herself slowly, hugging her knees, her body trembling from exhaustion. "You need rest," Daniel said firmly. "Even just for a little while." Lyra shook her head, her voice sharp though weak. "Rest is a trap. When I sleep, I dream. When I dream, they see me." Daniel frowned, kneeling before her. "Who sees you?" he asked, his tone soft, her eyes filled with fear, her lips pressed together. "The clan," she whispered. "The ones who rule my people. They mark children like me, children with the old blood. They hunt us before we grow strong enough to fight back." Daniel's chest tightened. "So you ran," he said. Understanding now, Lyra nodded slowly. "I escaped the night they came for me. I saw them take others, my friends. They never returned. I know what happens when they catch you." Her voice broke. Daniel's heart ached. He reached out carefully, placing a hand on her thin arm. "You're safe with me," he said firmly. "I won't let them touch you again." Lyra looked at his hand, then at his face, confusion mixing with something fragile. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why risk yourself for me? You could walk away and be free." Daniel met her eyes, his own steady. "Because I know what it feels like to be abandoned," he said. "And because I promised myself once, if I ever saw someone drowning like I was, I wouldn't look away." Lyra's lips trembled. She lowered her gaze. "No one ever said that to me before," she whispered. Silence filled the chamber for a moment, broken only by the drip of water. Daniel leaned against the wall, his eyes scanning the shadows. Lyra curled tighter, her head resting on her knees. "You don't trust me yet," Daniel said softly. "But trust doesn't come in a moment. It comes step by step, and I'll take those steps with you." Her small voice answered, fragile but sincere. "If you walk beside me, you'll be hunted too." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then let them hunt," he said. "I've been running from shadows all my life. Maybe it's time I face them." Lyra raised her head slowly, surprise in her glowing eyes. No one had ever chosen to share her curse before. In that dim chamber, something shifted inside her, a thread of hope woven into the despair. Hours passed. The sounds of the hunters faded above. Daniel kept watch while Lyra's body finally gave into exhaustion. She slept leaning against the crate, her breathing uneven, her fingers clutching the remaining bread as if afraid it would vanish. Daniel studied her face in the faint light. She looked so fragile, yet she carried power that could shake walls. She was dangerous not because of what she wanted, but because of what others feared she might become. As she slept, he whispered quietly, almost to himself, "You're not just a burden, Lyra. You're a spark." Suddenly a faint hum filled the air. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He stood quickly, moving to the tunnel entrance. The hum grew louder, mechanical, searching. A small drone floated by, red light scanning the walls. Daniel ducked back into the shadows, heart pounding. The hunters were using machines now. They weren't giving up. He turned back to Lyra. She stirred, eyes half opening. "What is it?" she murmured. "Trouble," Daniel said quietly. "They're searching the tunnels." Lyra's face paled. "Then we can't stay here," she whispered. Daniel nodded, helping her stand. "Stay close," he said. "And no matter what happens, don't let go of my hand." She slipped her thin fingers into his, her grip trembling but firm. Daniel led her deeper into the maze of tunnels, the sound of the drone echoing behind. As they walked, Lyra whispered softly, "You're different, Daniel. Most humans would have sold me to them for credits, but you hold my hand like I'm not cursed." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Because you're not cursed," he replied. "You're just a girl fighting to survive, and that's something I respect." Her eyes softened, the glow faint but warmer now. She whispered, "Then maybe I can trust you." Daniel's chest tightened. He knew the bond forming here was dangerous. To protect her meant making enemies he could never outrun. But looking at her fragile hope, he knew he had no choice. Behind them, the red light of the drone flickered closer. Voices of the hunters echoed through the tunnels. The danger was not over. It was only growing stronger, and as Daniel and Lyra held hands, stepping deeper into the shadows, the bond between them tightened. A bond dangerous to both of them but unbreakable. The tunnels stretched endlessly, cold metal walls echoing every sound. Daniel and Lyra moved carefully, their footsteps soft, but the hunters were not far. Their drones buzzed behind, scanning with red light. Lyra held Daniel's hand tightly, her breathing shallow. Every time the light flickered across the walls, she flinched. Daniel kept her close, his jaw tight, his mind racing. "We can't keep running forever," Daniel whispered, his voice low. "They'll trap us sooner or later." Lyra nodded weakly, her eyes glowing faintly. "They always trap us," she said softly. "That's how the clan works, no matter where we hide. Their net closes." Daniel stopped, turning to face her. "Then we'll break the net," he said firmly, though his heart pounded with doubt. Before Lyra could answer, a loud clang echoed through the tunnel. Metal doors slammed shut at both ends, sealing the path. Lyra gasped, clutching Daniel's arm. "They've boxed us in," she whispered, her voice trembling. From the shadows the hunters emerged, 3 figures stepping forward, their rods sparking, their red eyes glowing. The leader smirked coldly. The mouse and her protector, finally. Caught in the net, Daniel pulled Lyra behind him, his fists clenched. "She's not going with you," he said, his voice steady. The leader laughed darkly. "You think you can fight us, human? You have no weapon, no strength, only foolish bravery." Lyra's hands glowed faintly again, but Daniel felt her shaking. "Don't," he whispered quickly. "You're too weak right now." The hunters circled them slowly, their boots striking. The floor like a drumbeat, one of them hissed, "Give her to us, human, and you walk away alive." Daniel's chest burned with anger. He shook his head. "If you want her, you'll have to kill me first." The leader's eyes narrowed. "So be it." He raised his rod. Lightning crackled. In that moment, Lyra stepped forward suddenly, her voice breaking. "Stop. Don't hurt him. I'll go with you." Daniel turned, sharply, his eyes wide. "No, Lyra, don't," he said. Tears streamed down her pale cheeks, her voice trembling. "They'll kill you if I don't. I can't let you suffer because of me." The leader smiled cruelly. "At least the girl has sense," he said, reaching for her arm. But before his hand touched her, Daniel moved faster than thought. He tackled the hunter with all his strength. The rod clattered across the floor, sparks flying. The other hunters hissed in rage. Lyra screamed, her hands glowing brighter. A wave of blue energy burst from her, palms blasting one hunter into the wall. The tunnel shook, dust and rust falling from above. The leader snarled, rising to his feet. "Enough games, girl. You can't control that power. You'll burn yourself out." Daniel stood beside Lyra, panting, bruised but unbroken. "She's stronger than you think," he growled. Lyra's glow flickered, her body trembling violently. She gasped, "I can't hold it much longer." The hunters advanced again. The net was tightening. Daniel looked around desperately, his eyes caught on a vent above, barely wide enough. But maybe, just maybe. He grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her toward the wall. "Climb," he whispered urgently. "Now." Lyra shook her head. "I can't. I'll slow you down." Daniel met her eyes, fierce, determined. "I'm not leaving you climb." With trembling hands, Lyra pulled herself up. Daniel pushed her from below. The hunters lunged forward, one striking Daniel across the back with the rod. Pain seared through him. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. "Go, Lyra," he shouted, his voice raw. Lyra cried out, her glowing hands gripping the edge of the vent. She pulled herself inside, her eyes wide with tears. "Daniel!" she screamed. Daniel turned, his body shaking. He faced the hunters, his fists raised, though he had no weapon. "You're not taking her," he said through clenched teeth. The leader sneered, stepping closer. "Then you'll die first." But before the rod struck again, a burst of light flashed from the vent above. Lyra's voice echoed strong this time. "Leave him alone." A torrent of blue energy shot from her hands, striking the hunters with force that shook the tunnel. Sparks exploded. Metal cracked. The hunters were thrown back violently, their rods shattered, their bodies slamming against the wall. The glow faded. Lyra collapsed back into the vent. Exhausted, Daniel caught her as she slipped down, holding her close. The hunters groaned, struggling weakly, but their net was broken, their bodies too damaged to continue. Daniel looked at Lyra, her face pale, her breath weak. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. Lyra's lips curved faintly. "No," she murmured. "You saved me first." Daniel held her tighter, the danger not gone but delayed. He knew more hunters would come. The clan would never stop. But in this broken net, in this fragile moment, their bond grew stronger than fear. And as Daniel carried Lyra deeper into the shadows, he realized something. She was not just a thief, not just a runaway. She was someone worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The tunnels grew quieter as Daniel carried Lyra through the darkness. His arms ached, but he did not let go. Her breath was shallow, her glowing eyes half closed. Every step felt heavier, yet he kept moving. At last they reached a wide chamber abandoned long ago. Broken machinery lay scattered. The air smelled of burnt wires and dust. Daniel lowered Lyra carefully against a wall, brushing her hair from her face. "Rest here," he whispered. "I'll find water, something to help." Lyra shook her head weakly. "Don't leave me," she murmured, her hand clutching his sleeve. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "All right, I'll stay," he said softly. The silence was broken by a sudden metallic click. Lights flickered on. Around them, harsh and blinding, Daniel's eyes widened. Hidden doors opened on both sides of the chamber. Figures stepped out slowly. Armored enforcers. Not 3 this time, but 10. Lyra gasped, trying to stand, her body too weak. Daniel stood in front of her, fists clenched, his heart pounding. A tall alien walked forward, his robe dark red, his eyes sharp, his voice deep and calm. "So this is the human who interferes," he said coldly. "And the runaway girl who should never have lived this long." Lyra's body shook. She whispered, "Lord Kale." Her voice filled with dread. Daniel looked at her, then back at the alien. "Who is he?" he asked. Lyra's lips trembled. "The one who ordered my death," she whispered. Lord Kale smiled cruelly. "Correct, child. You carry blood too dangerous to exist, and now the fool human has tied his fate to yours." He turned to Daniel. "But I am generous, human. Step aside now, walk away, and I will let you live." Daniel's jaw tightened. He shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "If you want her, you'll have to take me down too." Kale's smile faded, his eyes cold. "So you choose death," he said. Lyra cried out, her voice desperate. "Please, Daniel, don't fight them. They'll kill you. Just leave me. It's me they want, not you." Daniel turned to her, his voice sharp but gentle. "I'm not leaving you, Lyra, not now, not ever." Kale raised his hand. The enforcers stepped forward, their weapons humming with energy, the chamber filled with the sound of power charging. But then, another voice echoed. Through the chamber, a human voice. "Stand down." Daniel froze, turning toward the sound. Another figure stepped from the shadows, a man in sleek armor, his face hidden behind a helmet. Kale paused, his eyes narrowing. The armored man removed his helmet slowly, revealing a scarred human face, his eyes cold and calculating. "Daniel," he said calmly, "step away from the girl. This isn't your fight." Daniel's heart skipped. "Who are you?" he demanded. The man smiled faintly. "An old friend," he said. "One who knows the price of crossing the clan." Lyra's eyes widened. "No, he's lying," she whispered. "He works for them. He betrayed others before." Daniel looked between them, doubt twisting his chest. The scarred man's eyes locked onto his. "Listen to me, Daniel. They'll kill you for nothing. Walk away now. Let the girl go. You'll live." Kale crossed his arms, watching silently, enjoying the moment. The human's choice mattered more than any battle. Lyra grabbed Daniel's arm, her voice breaking. "Don't believe him. Please don't let them take me." Daniel's throat tightened, sweat on his brow. His mind raced. The easy choice was to walk away, to live, but his heart screamed against it. The scarred man stepped closer, his voice calm, almost friendly. "I've seen what happens when humans play hero. They die for nothing. Do you want that fate?" Daniel looked at Lyra, trembling, her glowing eyes begging him not to abandon her. He thought of the hunger in her face, the way she tore bread in half to share, the way she saved him even when she was weak. Slowly, Daniel stepped forward. The scarred man's smile widened. Kale's eyes gleamed. Lyra gasped in terror. "No," she cried. "Don't. Leave me." Daniel stopped halfway, turning sharply to face them, his voice strong. "I won't," he said. "I choose her." Kale's face darkened. The scarred man's smile twisted into anger. "Then you're a fool," he spat. Daniel raised his fists, his body shaking but unyielding. "Maybe," he said, "but I'd rather be a fool who stood for someone than a coward who walked away." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but for the first time they shone with hope too. The chamber exploded with motion. The enforcers surged forward. Daniel stood his ground. Lyra gathered what little strength she had left, her hands glowing faintly. The choice had been made. Betrayal had been exposed. And now the fight for survival would begin. The chamber shook. As the enforcers rushed forward, sparks from their weapons lit the walls. Daniel stood tall, though his body trembled. Lyra leaned against him, her hands glowing faintly. her strength almost gone. Lord Kale's voice echoed like thunder. Take them alive. I want the human to see her die before we end him. The scarred man sneered, his eyes locked on Daniel. You should have walked away, he hissed. Now you'll die for her. Daniel clenched his fists, his chest heaving. If that's my fate, he said, then I'll die standing with her. The enforcers lunged. Daniel ducked the first strike, grabbing a metal pipe from the floor. He swung with all his strength. The weapon cracked against an enforcer's helmet. Sparks flying. Lyra cried out, her palms flaring blue. A weak blast of energy shot forward, knocking two more back, but her body collapsed again, too weak to continue. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground, his voice raw. Stay with me, Lyra. She opened her eyes faintly, whispering, I'm sorry, I can't hold it. Daniel's chest burned, rage and fear mixing. He lifted the pipe again, striking another enforcer, but there were too many. They surrounded him, their weapons raised. The scarred man stepped forward, his eyes cold. End it, he ordered. An enforcer raised his rod, lightning crackling. Lyra saw it, her heart broke. No, she screamed, her hands blazing with sudden light. A wave of raw power burst out. Stronger than before, the entire chamber shook. Metal cracked, walls trembled. The enforcers were thrown back violently. Smoke filled the air. Daniel shielded Lyra with his body as debris rained down. When the dust cleared, half the enforcers lay unconscious. The others staggered weakly. Lord Kale's eyes burned with fury. Her power is awakening, he growled. Kill her now. Daniel stood in front of her again, bruised, blood on his face, but his eyes blazed with defiance. You'll have to kill me first, he shouted. The scarred man raised his weapon but hesitated. His gaze flickered at Daniel, something unreadable in his eyes. Perhaps regret. Perhaps shame. Then he lowered it slowly. I won't, he muttered, turning. His back, Kale snapped in rage. Coward! Lyra pushed herself up weakly, her voice trembling but firm. No chains will hold me anymore, she whispered, her hands glowing brighter than ever. Daniel reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. Then let's end this together, he said. Their bond flared like fire. Daniel's courage and Lyra's power pulsed as one. Another burst of energy erupted, brighter and stronger than before. The remaining enforcers were hurled against the walls, their weapons shattering. Kale himself stumbled, shielding his eyes. Smoke filled the chamber again. Silence followed. The hunter's net was broken completely. Kale glared at them with venom, his voice sharp. This isn't the end, girl. Your bloodline will be hunted until the last breath. Daniel stepped forward, pipe in hand, his voice steady. Then remember this. Every time you hunt her, you'll find me standing in the way. Kale's eyes burned with hatred, but he turned and vanished into the shadows with his defeated enforcers, their footsteps fading. Silence filled the chamber once more. Daniel fell to one knee, breathing heavily. Lyra leaned against him, her body trembling, her eyes glowing faintly but warmly. You didn't leave, she whispered, her lips trembling. You chose me. Daniel looked at her, his own eyes soft, though tired. I told you, Lyra, I won't run from you. Her tears sparkled, falling down her cheeks. Then maybe I'm not cursed, she whispered. Maybe I was just waiting for someone who saw me as more than a burden. Daniel smiled faintly, brushing the dust from her hair. You're not a burden, he said. You're the bravest soul I've ever met. She closed her eyes, resting against him, her heart lighter than it had ever been. For the first time since she ran, Lyra felt safe, not because the hunters were gone, but because someone had chosen her, not for power, not for blood, but for who she was. Daniel looked toward the tunnels, his arms around her. He knew the danger wasn't over. Kale would come again. Others would chase them. But he also knew they would face it together. Their bond, born of hunger, fear, and defiance, had grown into something unbreakable, stronger than chains, stronger than fear. And in that broken chamber with smoke still rising, Daniel whispered softly, No matter what comes, Lyra, you're not alone anymore. Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile, her eyes closing, her voice a fragile whisper. Then maybe I can finally dream. Daniel held her close, his heart steady. He knew their story was only beginning. But whatever, trials waited in the stars. They would face them as one. Heart over chains, human and alien. No longer strangers, but bound by choice.